Where the hell can I get eyes like that?
Greetings, fellow film buffs. I am Naz Perez, and welcome to an almost fresh and exciting new episode of RT Essentials. Why almost fresh? Because critics don't always see eye to eye, and though a film can still garner shining reviews from credible sources, that doesn't mean it's so fresh and so clean. Any film that earns a tomato meter score of 60% or higher can freely enter the Fresh Club. Anything below that, and you can head next door, where Club Rotten will gladly take you in. Fun fact, I'm actually president of the Rotten Films fan club. I happen to really like Rotten Films. I mean, just look up the score for Space Jam or Night at the Roxbury, and you'll get a really good idea of who I am. But let's talk about the movies that came really close, but just didn't make the cut, and why. These are our selections for the Rotten Tomatoes Almost Fresh Club. Taken.
Who left that gate open? Right, get her out of here. Take the lead. Go, 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 go. Go. We want security here now. Easy. Bernie, stand by. Stand by.
Kicking off the French action thriller Taken, directed by Pierre Morel and written by Luc Besson and Robert Mark Kamen. Liam Neeson plays Brian Mills, a former CIA operative who desperately tries to reconnect with his daughter Kim. Kim was abducted in Paris shortly after arriving, and now Brian has 4 days to rescue her before the unthinkable happens. In addition to Neeson, the film stars Maggie Grace, Leland Oser, Katie Cassidy, and John Grise. Though this became a landmark role for Neeson, it was actually Jeff Bridges who was originally cast as Brian Mills. But the dude didn't abide, and just before shooting began, Bridges dropped out. Neeson happened to be looking for a more physically challenging role at the time, and he eagerly accepted the part, though he didn't expect this movie to be such a career changer for him. Boy, was he wrong, because Taken grossed over $226 million on a budget of $25 million, and spawned a franchise that consists of 2 follow-up sequels and a television series.
Are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
So, why the almost fresh score? Well, critics like Peter Travers from Rolling Stone wrote that the film was, quote, fun for about 15 minutes seeing Neeson do James Bond as a Daddy Dangerous, but the surprise wears off quickly. And Time magazine wrote that Taken has nothing more on its mind than dozens of bad guys getting beat up and another one turned into instant roadkill. But hey, others did praise the film, writing that it's a pedal to the metal actioner and calling Brian Mills an efficient hero. After the film was released, Jeff Bridges admitted that Neeson was a way better fit for the role, so correction, the dude does in fact abide. Die Hard with a Vengeance. Vengeance is an action thriller directed by John McTiernan, the man behind Predator and The Hunt for Red October. It's the third film in the Die Hard series, featuring characters created by Roderick Thorpe for his 1979 novel Nothing Lasts Forever. Now, Bruce Willis returns as Detective John McClane, only now he's a divorced alcoholic recently fired due to his reckless behavior and bad attitude. When a cryptic terrorist takes New York City hostage in a lethal game of Simon Says, McClane is called back into action. That's because the terrorist, played by Jeremy Irons, refuses to speak with anyone other than McClane. McClane teams up with a street-savvy electrician named Zeus, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and the two work together to halt the murderous plot.
How the Catholic do that thing? North, south, west, east. What's time? 27 minutes.
Screenwriter Jonathan Hensley had originally written a spec script entitled Simon Says, with young action star Brandon Lee in mind. Warner Brothers then bought that script with the intention of making it the fourth Lethal Weapon movie, but instead it was retooled as another McClane adventure. Watching this film, you can see similarities in the love-hate banter between McClane and Zeus, and Murtaugh and Riggs in Lethal Weapon. Die Hard with a Vengeance became the highest-grossing film of the year and gained a cult following, but it did receive a mixed critical response. Many praised Jackson's performance, with some writing that he was almost as good as he was in Pulp Fiction, and we all know he was pretty damn good in Pulp Fiction. But others felt that the film as a whole didn't compete with the original Die Hard and considered it, quote, subpar. Still, this film contains some of the best action sequences ever, and that's why we fell in love with Die Hard in the first place. The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies.
Secret! Children! My children! Where are my children?
I saw them! They were.
New Zealand director Peter Jackson has masterfully brought J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy novels to life. His adaptation of The Hobbit consists of 3 films, the last of which is The Battle of the Five Armies. It stars Martin Freeman, Ian McKellen, Richard Armitage, Evangeline Lilly, Luke Evans, Lee Pace, Benedict Cumberbatch, Cate Blanchett, and so many others. I mean, I could take up an entire episode listing all the incredible talent in this film, but don't worry, I won't waste your precious or my precious time. But this installment follows Thorin Oakenshield, who has recently reclaimed Erebor, aka the Lonely Mountain, from the dragon Smaug. Thorin is blinded by greed and sacrifices friendship and honor in his search for the Arkenstone, a powerful gem considered to be a divine symbol for the king. Brave Hobbit Bilbo Baggins tries to reason with Thorin as Sauron and an army of orcs attack the Lonely Mountain. Now, the fate of Middle-earth hangs in the balance of the elves, dwarves, and men who must learn to work together or all die. The Battle of the Five Armies grossed over $962 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of the year behind Transformers: Age of Extinction. It was also nominated for Best Sound Editing at the 87th Academy Awards. So why the not-so-epic tomato meter score? Well, critics from the New York Post wrote that, quote, it's adequately visionary, routinely spectacular, and breathes fire, yet somehow feels room temperature. And Rolling Stone called out Jackson for, quote, sadly saving the worst for last. But hey, it was a victory after all, I suppose. Pitch Black.
Are you saying you'd cut me loose?
I'm thinking you could have died in the crash.
My recommendation, do me. Don't take the chance that I'll get shit happy on your wannabe ass.
Okay.
Ghost me, that's what I would do to you.
Pitch Black is a sci-fi horror directed by David Twohy, who also co-wrote the script along with Ken and Jim Wee. Set 500 years in the future, it is the story of a dangerous criminal named Richard Riddick who is being transported to prison on a spacecraft. When the ship crashes on an unexplored planet, the survivors soon discover that said planet will be entering a state of eclipse, which is bound to bring out some deadly nocturnal creatures. Now, Riddick might be the one to lead the survivors off this planet if they can learn to trust him. Vin Diesel stars in this, and additional cast members include Radha Mitchell, Keith David, and Cole Hauser. Brotherly duo Ken and Jim Wee had worked on horror sequels like Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and The Fly 2. Their script for Pitch Black was originally called Nightfall, which was mostly the same, spaceship crashes on an alien planet, dark eclipse brings monsters, etc. But in the initial drafts, the convict was a woman. Twohy had done some early work on what would become Alien 3, and he wanted to get this movie as far away from copycat land as possible, which is why he opted for a male lead and spent a lot of time refining the character arcs. This film gained a cult following and spawned 2 sequels, The Chronicles of Riddick, released in 2004, and Riddick, released in 2013. Though it became a sleeper hit, many considered the film cliché and commented on its lack of actual horror despite the genre. Deep Blue Sea. America's shark obsession only seems to be growing stronger, partially ignited by the classic Jaws and the Discovery Channel's Shark Week, which, fun fact, is the longest running cable television program event in history. One thing we can count on, if there's a shark involved, people will watch it. And the 1999 sci-fi horror Deep Blue Sea was no exception to that rule. The film was directed by Renny Harlin, whose other action-forward features include Die Hard 2 and Cliffhanger. Set on an island research facility, Dr. Susan McAllister is focused on harvesting the brain tissue of DNA-altered mako sharks as a possible cure for Alzheimer's disease. Naturally, things soon go awry. I mean, who would have imagined that sharks don't make for docile test subjects? These highly intelligent makos outnumber their human captors, and McAllister and her team must fight to survive while also preventing said sharks from escaping to the ocean and breeding.
All right, people, let's move. Now! Get to the door! Come on, you can't help it. Come on.
I mean, this has to be the most ridiculous premise for a shark movie ever. Wait, what's that? There's a 6-film series about a waterspout lifting sharks out of the ocean and placing them in suburbs to terrorize people? I stand corrected. Deep Blue Sea story actually has a pretty disturbing origin. When screenwriter Duncan Kennedy was a child, he actually witnessed a dead shark attack victim on a beach in Australia. This encounter led to recurring nightmares in which Kennedy was, quote, being chased in chest-deep flooded hallways where he could barely move by sharks that were always one step ahead of him. I mean, if that doesn't sound horrifying, I don't know what is. Reviews were mixed, with The New Yorker calling it scary, absurd, and inessential, and Empire magazine writing that it's about giant sharks eating people, and that's exactly what you get. If nothing else though, check out LL Cool J's music video for the theme song Deepest Bluest. Spoiler alert, he morphs into a shark. You can thank me later. A Knight's Tale. A Knight's Tale is an adventure rom-com written, directed, and co-produced by Brian Helgeland. In his breakout role, Heath Ledger plays the peasant-born William Thatcher, who begins a quest to change his fate, and in the process, win the heart of an exceedingly fair maiden. With a little help from his friends, William faces the ultimate test of medieval gallantry, tournament jousting, and discovers that he might just have the mettle to become a legend. Now, this film isn't so easily categorized. On the one hand, it's a period piece. On the other hand, it's a rock musical mixed with historical fiction and splashes of a sports epic. Helgeland was calculated in his genre bending and his time jumping. The writer-director admitted that in 1370, when the film is set, it really would have been Men in Tights. But his premise for this film was no matter what century you're in, the 70s are always the 70s. I mean, this explains the David Bowie and John Lennon references.
To be of humble origins. But my personal historians have discovered that he is descendant from an ancient royal line. This is my word, and as such is beyond contestation.
Production shot on location in Prague, and believe it or not, the jousting in this film is real. After several failed attempts to use tricky camera angles and CGI, Helgeland decided to have his stunt people actually joust, which adds authenticity and shock value to the action sequences, but don't worry, the lances were blunted and the actors had padding. Though A Knight's Tale failed to make it to the land of the fresh, it did gain a cult following and is largely responsible for making Heath Ledger the star that we love and miss so dearly. Paranormal Activity 2. Paranormal Activity 2 is a prequel set 2 months before the first film in the franchise. We follow the Rays, a family who just moved into their new home in Southern California. Now, it's a lovely place, there's just one itsy-bitsy little problem: it is haunted as hell. After coming home one day to find things in complete disarray with no signs of forced entry or robbery, the Rays decide to install a video surveillance camera to catch the perpetrators. But nothing could prepare them for what happens next. after the gargantuan success of writer-director Oren Peli's first Paranormal Activity, Paramount wasted no time in getting a sequel made. For this follow-up, Peli took on the role of producer, and Todd Williams was actually hired to direct the screenplay, written by Michael R. Perry, Christopher Landon, and Tom Pabst. It is common knowledge that the first sequel can make or break a franchise, so the pressure was on for this one to be a hit, and commercially, I'd say mission accomplished. Paranormal Activity 2 broke the record for the biggest midnight gross for an R-rated film, and had the biggest opening of any horror movie in history. It placed #1 at the box office on its opening day, and on a shoestring budget of $3 million, ended up grossing almost $180 million. But the curse of the House of Ray seemed to carry on over to the critics, and many felt that it was inferior to the first film. Dr. Seuss's The Grinch.
Oh, thanks, mister. Hey! You're a mean one, mister.
Based on the 1957 book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Dr. Seuss's The Grinch is a computer-animated family comedy produced by Illumination, their second Dr. Seuss adaptation following The Lorax. We journey to the fantastical town of Whoville, where the Grinch and his loyal dog Max live their solitary existence inside a cave on Mount Crumpet. Now, we all know Mr. Grinch's main source of aggravation is Christmas, so as the holiday approaches, he hatches a scheme to pose as Santa Claus and silence the Who's holiday cheer once and for all.
We will not be stopped.
The film features the voice talents of Benedict Cumberbatch, Rashida Jones, Kenan Thompson, Angela Lansbury, and Pharrell Williams, who also serves as the narrator. The Grinch became the highest-grossing Christmas film of all time, finally surpassing Home Alone, which still remains in second place over 30 years after its initial release. But despite leaving an indelible mark in the pantheon of holiday classics, The Grinch's critical reception wasn't so cheery. Peter Travers playfully wrote, "You're a mediocre one, Mr. Grinch," and MovieFreak.com claimed that, quote, "It's so shockingly bland, so immediately forgettable, so pedestrian in its plotting, that they found watching it to be fairly laborious. I mean, hey guys, where's your Christmas spirit?" Oh wait, Screen Rant said that The Grinch is holiday fun for the whole family, adapting a classic story with a new twist that makes for an altogether compelling movie experience. Not bad, but still, this one remains as rotten as Grinch himself. The Rugrats Movie. Nickelodeon's celebrated series, Rugrats, was adapted into a feature-length film entitled The Rugrats Movie, released in 1998. The animated comedy finds Tommy Pickles trying to return his baby brother to the hospital after being warned by his mean-spirited friend Angelica that once his new sibling is born, his parents won't care about him anymore. I mean, really, Angelica? You're saying these awful things to a toddler? While on the mission, Tommy and his friends lose their way in the woods and run into a pack of wild monkeys who have recently escaped the circus. Tommy and his friends begin to think that maybe things at home weren't so bad after all. The movie features the voices of E.G. Daily, Tara Strong, Christine Cavanaugh, Kath Soucie, Cheryl Chase, and Charlie Adler, along with guest stars David Spade, Whoopi Goldberg, Margaret Cho, Busta Rhymes, and Tim Curry.
Don't let him take me, Tommy! I don't want to be Monkey Boy!
Hang on to your diapers, babies!
Kid, thanks, Dill. You're my hero!
Plans to make a Rugrats feature were in the works almost as soon as the series first aired back in the early 90s. But due to production and distribution obstacles, it wasn't until 1995 that production actually began for this film. It was well worth the wait because the Rugrats movie opened at #1 and became the first non-Disney film to gross over $100 million in the United States. It also spawned 2 sequels, one released in 2000 and another in 2003. But as we've learned, being popular doesn't make you fresh, and the critical reception was mediocre. Roger Ebert disliked the film, but admitted that he might have liked it if he were a kid. I'm confused though, was it unclear that Rugrats is in fact a kid's movie? Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
I need human brains to survive.
Now pick up some chickens, man. Let's go.
I'm done with this grossness.
Last up is Venom, Let There Be Carnage, a superhero action film directed by Andy Serkis and written by Kelly Marcel. It is the second film in the Sony Spider-Man universe and the sequel to 2018's Venom. We follow Eddie Brock, who is still struggling to coexist with his shape-shifting extraterrestrial counterpart, and when deranged serial killer Cletus Cassidy also becomes a host to an alien symbiote known as Carnage, Brock and Venom must put aside their differences to stop his reign of terror. Tom Hardy is Venom, and additional cast members include Michelle Williams, Naomi Harris, Reed Scott, Stephen Graham, and Woody Harrelson. And for those of you unfamiliar with Andy Serkis, he is a master in the art of motion capture acting. He actually portrayed Caesar in the Planet of the Apes reboot franchise and played Supreme Leader Snoke in the Star Wars sequel films. His unique experience and skill set made him an obvious choice to direct Let There Be Carnage, as the film relies really heavily on CGI and motion capture technology. He had also previously directed the films Breathe and Mowgli: The Legend of the Jungle, so this was not his first rodeo. Let There Be Carnage was a commercial success, becoming the 7th highest grossing film of 2021, but critically, it didn't redeem the poor reception of the first Venom film.
Death to you, Father.
No!
Not you, Father. You, Father. Oh,
Where you going? Where you doing?
this is much worse than I thought. That is a red one. Wow.
Red one.
We should leave immediately. Annie will get over it. We never liked her anyway. So, let's go.
No.
Congratulations to the happy couple. We are leaving.
Though the London Evening Standard labeled it intoxicating, and Vox called it a superhero movie that understands how scary the world can be. Empire magazine wrote that for all the talented people involved, Let There Be Carnage still has a whiff of a turd in the wind. Ew, sounds rotten, and that's because it is. And there you have it, our selections to the Rotten Tomatoes Almost Fresh Club. I am Naz Perez, thank you so much for watching, and remember, just because it's rotten doesn't mean it isn't rockin'.